Hey everyone, welcome back to the Spirit of Prophecy podcast. We are going to do another review of a documentary today. I hope you all are enjoying these. If you do, make sure you leave a comment. Tell me which documentaries you'd like me to cover in the future, and hopefully we'll get to those. I always enjoy watching documentaries whenever I get a chance, and so I enjoy discussing them, talking about them. I like ones that make me think. I like ones that challenge me a little bit. And this one was very interesting to me for many reasons, and that's the documentary called Praying for Armageddon. Now, this was put out by Al Jazeera, and I know right there, those of you who have been well trained in cancel culture and just the American way of just, canceling out all opposition, not hearing what they have to say as soon as you hear something you don't like, I just lost you, okay? But for those who have the ability to think objectively, to those who are not afraid of a challenge and who are not afraid to accurately represent the other side, you stay and you can watch this. The rest of you get triggered and move on. But this film, Praying for Armageddon, is a political thriller that investigates the dangerous consequences of the fusion between evangelical Christianity and American politics. Through years of reporting, this film not only reveals how structures of fundamentalism weaken the very fabric of American democracy, but also highlights the devastating impact religion wields on U.S. foreign policy. From grassroots foundation and megachurch empires to the dark backroom maneuvering in Washington, D.C., this film ventures inside a movement that ultimately aims to destroy our civilization. This deep dive into power and policy unveils how politicians driven by faith embrace Israel as the key to their prophetic vision for the end of days at any cost, ultimately escalating the spirals of violence in the Middle East. As Intercept journalist Lee Fang says, we cannot look away. Now, without a doubt, many of the sentences in there were very troubling to you as a Christian. To hear him talk about fundamentalism weakening the very fabric of American democracy, that right there is going to cause most of you to just walk away and move on. And I understand why that is. He also says in here too, talks about just the devastating impact religion wields on U.S. foreign policy. So of course, Christians are going to hear this and they're going to be like, I am not listening to what this person has to say. I am not interested in the least. And obviously, without a doubt, these people are not on our side. They do not think the way we do when it comes to Christianity, politics, and things like that. However, sometimes there are people out there who have a very negative view of Christianity and religion, because there are people out there who make it look really bad. There is a lot of foolishness that is going on in the name of religion, and it is displayed in this documentary. And I just want to go on record to say that what is displayed on this documentary, not only is it an accurate representation of a large portion of American evangelicalism, I want to also say I am completely opposed to it, and I am completely against it, and we need real Christians standing up against this kind of nonsense. If we are going to let people like John Hagee and Robert Jeffress represent Christianity, then we can't be surprised when other people come along and make Christianity or think negatively about Christianity and say negative things. I do not believe these men represent biblical Christianity whatsoever. I believe they represent a political movement, and that's it. And they use religion as a way to get on board with this political movement. I think they're frauds. I think they are heretics. I think they deserve to be called out. I do think these men are dangerous. And so it's sad to see this film saying some things that are very negative towards Christianity in general. And obviously, while it's troubling hearing that, I do not believe what is shown on this documentary represents Christians like me. But I also understand Christians like me are in the minority, and this crazy movement is growing. And yes, while most Baptists and IFB people don't identify themselves with John Hagee, understand what he is promoting is also being promoted in Baptist churches as well. So yes, so Li Fang, obviously, he is not a believer by any means. He seems to be very opposed to Christianity. That's a problem. I get that. But when he thinks of Christianity, he's thinking of John Hagee and Robert Jeffers. I understand why he's against it. And so let me read Li Fang's bio to you. But he is a journalist with a long-standing interest in how public policy is influenced by organized interest groups and money. He was the first to uncover in detail the role of the billionaire Koch brothers in financing the Tea Party movement. His interviews and research on the Koch brothers have been featured in HBO's The Newsroom, the documentaries Merchants of Doubt, and Citizen Koch, as well in the multiple media outlets. He was an investigative blogger for Think Progress from 2009 to 2011, and then a fellow at the Investigative Fund of the National Institute and contributing writer for The Nation. And so it goes on to give some more of his credentials that he has. But if that's what he does, is following the way religion affects foreign policy, then again, I can definitely see why he would have a very negative view of Christianity, because Zionism is pushed big time by mainstream Christians in politics. Most Christians today are doing more to promote Israel's agenda and a Jewish agenda than they are a Christian agenda. And I believe what they are promoting and pushing for is very bad for this country. And I am sure that myself and Li Fang, we have very different visions and views and desires for this country. But I think we would both agree what the Zionists are promoting is really bad. I reached out to him a long time ago, tried to get him to come on the program. I never heard anything back. I've reached out again recently. I would love to talk to him about these things. I would love to try to present a biblical Christianity to him and a biblical Christian view on these things, because it does seem he has a very negative view of Christianity. And I get it, considering the types of Christians that he is looking at. And so he shows this. He shows these people in the documentary, and they definitely do come across as weird and wild. And Baptists, we are, in general, we are no exception to this. Okay, Liberty Baptist Church is an exception, but IFB in general, definitely not an exception. So in our American culture, we've been conditioned to think there's only two sides to everything. One is right, the other is wrong. We are good, they are evil. That's how we think. We are a very man-centered people. And unfortunately, even in Christianity, Jesus is no longer the center or the focal point. It's always a man. It's always some kind of movement that everybody wants to get behind. If you go to most Baptist conferences today, they are going to talk more about old-time religion and the great names associated with it than they're going to talk about Jesus Christ. Many religious leaders, they will talk more about their popes, their pastors, things like that than they do Jesus Christ. We are a very man-centered religion, and that's kind of how we think. And we get very attached to political figures as well. And many Christians, in spite of Trump's major flaws and even though he clearly is not a Christian, based on his own testimony of what he's trying to do to earn heaven, Christians are still fully supportive of him, because in their world, it was either Trump or Kamala. Therefore, Trump has to be good, Kamala has to be evil. There's no possibility ever that both are bad. That's just not how we've been trained to think in America today. And so we all want a team, but we are all very used to only being given two options, and we've got to be loyal to that team to the death. And different movements always get hijacked by big money. I remember the Tea Party movement and how that looked like a great thing for a while, but it got corrupted real fast, thanks to the Koch brothers, thanks to all the big money that was behind it. It's interesting that Li Feng was the first one to report on that. But these political movements always destroy everything. We get forced to take an entire package. Within the Republican Party, of course, there are certain things on their platform that we as Christians are for. However, there are things that we are very much against, or at least we should be very much against. But we're told we've got to take the whole package, and so we get on board with everything that they do. And it's not right. There's always bad in these political packages. And so because of this, most people who watch this documentary, they're immediately going to be turned off if they're a Christian, because it's crystal clear that the people behind it are on the left. It's clear they are not Christians. It's very clear they do not like Christian values. They are pro-abortion. There's a reference there to that. They don't like Christians influencing politics. And of course we take issue with that. I think Christians should influence politics. However, I think it's important what we promote, that it's actually biblical, and Zionism is not biblical. And we've proved that 50 different ways on this program. We're not going to take time to do that right now. But what if, when it comes to just one issue, they have a point and are even possibly in the right, while we who are Christians and conservatives and love biblical values, what if there's an area where we are wrong and we're killing our testimony? In this documentary, it gives us a glimpse into the minds of those outside of Christianity who are looking in and listening to what evangelicals are saying about the end times. And I don't believe their conclusions are wrong. And so my questions for those that are watching this is, are they getting the wrong idea and we're just failing to communicate? Or is this what you, as an evangelical Christian, actually believe? And so here's what they think. They think that our theology or our eschatology causes us to believe that the world has to fall apart for prophecy to be fulfilled, and that we as Christians are trying to make that happen. So here's a big question. Are they wrong about that? So again, and you say, well, no, that's not, I don't think that. Well, actually, I think you do. Because again, in our Christian end times theology, everything's going to go to pot. Everything's going to go to the Antichrist. You know, that's what we think. Everything's going to end in the battle of Armageddon, and Christians almost get excited when they hear bad news, when they see things are falling apart. And that's shown in this documentary. And interestingly enough, the very first voice you hear on this documentary is the voice of John Hagee. The very next voice that you hear is the voice of Robert Jeffress, saying the famous line, "The next event on God's prophetic calendar is the rapture of the church." It is true that the people who are supporting a pro-Israel foreign policy fully expect to be gone when everything falls apart. And so understand that, yeah, they do believe the things that they are promoting will lead to things falling apart in the world. However, Jesus will come back and straighten it all out 7 years later. But for those who do not believe in Christ, when they're watching Christians promote a political ideology that's going to make the world fall apart, can you understand why they might be freaked out a little bit? Can you understand why that might scare them? Because some of these people too, they just have common sense. Even if they're not saved, even if they're not believers, they can see, hey, these policies will cause all kinds of instability in the world. These things will cause wars to take place. This will be devastating for mankind. But in the meantime, Christians are like, I understand that. However, that's what the Bible prophesies. Well, here's the big question. Are we sure it's even time for that yet? Why would we ever support a political ideology, a foreign policy that will cause the world to fall apart? What if Jesus isn't coming back for another 200 or 300 years? But that's not even a thought in the mind of your mainstream evangelical Christian. They've been told, because 1948, when Israel became a nation, this is the final generation. And therefore, There is no reason to plan for hundreds of years in the future. They're not doing that. And that's wrong. That's actually against the Bible. That's against Christianity. And so these two men that immediately get featured, they are seen as leaders in the evangelical world. And even if you say that you don't follow them, your foreign policy, if you're a pro-Israel Christian, is basically identical to theirs, and it's motivated by the same false doctrine. Real Christians need to shout down men like John Hagee and Robert Jeffress. And these men need to be condemned loudly and strongly by real Christians. Maybe if we did, it would help our testimony in the world a little bit. And so this documentary, kind of a funny thing about it, but again, an accurate representation, it follows a group of bikers who are ready and anxious to fight for Israel. I saw men that were like this when I was in Jerusalem. And I know many Baptists who are just like these guys. The only difference is they're not bikers. These people can be entertaining to watch as Christians, but at the same time, their thinking, their ideology, I can see why it freaks the world out. It is pretty dangerous. These men are ready to fight for Israel. And what they like to do, they like to get in their groups and they go to Israel. They're dressed up all like bikers, wearing American flags, Israeli flags. They like to stand there at the Wailing Wall, just kind of having a tough, intimidating presence. They're just daring somebody to come mess with the Jews on their watch. And obviously around the Wailing Wall, it is highly unlikely anything's going to happen there. Israeli military is always around there. It's mainly Jewish people or Christians who are supportive of Israel who are around the Wailing Wall, but they love going there and standing around, and just in their minds, they fantasize about the Muslims coming and attacking the Jews. And these men are ready to fight. They really are. I don't think they understand why, but they are ready to fight. And so watching them on this documentary, it's pretty funny. But folks, Baptists are the same way. There are Baptist preachers who go around to churches in America raising money to buy tactical gear for Israeli military and things like that. They are actively involved in trying to help Israelis kill Muslims, and it's a shame. And some of these people would love to go over there and be a part of it. I know of Baptist evangelists and preachers who have gone over there to Israel, and they've signed missiles that they were going to be shooting over into Palestinian territory. And it's a shame the way Christians support the slaughtering of Muslim people over there. And understand, they're not all Muslim over there too. There's a lot of Christians over there. But they think what they're doing is like promoting some kind of holy war. They think all of this needs to take place for end times events to come to pass, like the Bible teaches. But the reality is they're wrong. And even if they were right in their view of what's going to come in the future, even if they were right about how the world's going to fall apart before Jesus comes back, I don't see anywhere in the scriptures where we are told to help the world fall apart. We should be doing everything we can to hold it together. And so this mentality is very strange. It is very foreign to Christianity. One of the biker preachers they had on there, they show him twisting the Bible to make it sound like we should be ready to fight a physical battle for Israel. And so this documentary, it clearly does not like religious beliefs influencing our politicians. And this makes us want to side with the Christian politicians, but they just happen to be wrong about their beliefs. Listen, I don't mind looking bad for right. I understand there are things that the Bible actually teaches and promotes that causes us to look like fools to the world, that even causes us to be hated. I will take that. I will gladly take the abuse, the persecution, the hatred, the scorn for things that are biblical. But you know what? Let's not look bad, make Christianity look bad for things that are wrong, for things that the scriptures do not teach. And Zionism is a great example of that. Our politicians, they show them on this documentary, repeating Zionist and pre-trib theology. They interview different politicians who, like Ted Cruz recently, says those who bless Israel will be blessed. That's how they say it. That's how they interpret Genesis 12. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. And that is always applied towards supporting the Netanyahu agenda of government. It's not even about just being kind and blessing Jewish people or even the residents of Israel. It's always applied towards supporting Netanyahu's agenda. And it's embarrassing. Listen to these politicians talk about that. And these politicians that are on there, these Republicans, they definitely sound like they're pre-tribbers, pro-Zionist, pre-tribbers, and they're making Christians look bad. I don't want to be associated with these people at all. So this documentary, it shows how American patriotism, and hey, I love my country. I'm all for American patriotism. But that also shows how it's closely connected to support for Israel. And when it comes to the American patriotic culture of today and what it looks like, it always includes standing with and supporting Israel. That is the way patriotism looks today. It used to just look like American flag waving. Now it's American and Israeli flag waving. These people believe supporting Israel is the greatest thing they can do for their country. That is their mentality, and that is why they are so zealous about their support for Israel. That is how they are patriotic. That is how we will bring blessing to our nation, by doing good things for Israel. And so while this documentary clearly highlights some of the craziest on this issue, I must say it's not far off from many Baptists I know. If you want, you can try to make an argument that they went and they found a political extreme and they try to paint all Christians as that. I'm telling you, there's only a sliver difference between what is promoted on this documentary and what I have seen my whole life in independent fundamental Baptist churches, which you can easily find all over the internet going on independent fundamental Baptist churches. We have independent fundamental Baptist churches who have Israel Sunday that's all about supporting Israel. It's not even about prophecy. It's all about standing with and supporting Israel. A lot of Israeli flag waving stuff that goes on in church services. Absolutely astounding. So this documentary, I don't believe it exaggerates. I don't believe it's painting with a broad brush. Obviously, I don't think I should be included in that, but I've been vocally against this stuff. I've been vocal against John Hagee and Robert Jeffress for a long time, and I'm going to continue to do that. And this documentary makes me want to speak out against these guys even more. And so when you have somebody, and they show one on this documentary, talking about Jesus returning with an AR-15, you deserve to be seen as a nut. And on that website at the beginning, I know it might be offensive seeing a picture of what's supposed to be Jesus carrying his American flag and an AR-15 at his return. And that is offensive, but that is what the Christians on this program are supporting. And you know what? I think most Zionist Christians probably see a picture like that and they're like, I could see that. They could see Jesus coming back with an American flag and an AR-15, maybe an Israeli flag. But either way, that makes them feel good seeing that stuff. As far as I'm concerned, it's blasphemous. We should not get excited about things going to pot. But these types of Christians do, and it is contrary to what Christianity is supposed to be. How many times have you heard a Christian, whenever things are terrible in the news, say things like, things aren't falling apart, they're falling into place? It's like, really? You think that's what God wants right now, is everything falling apart? As we see wickedness growing and spreading, you think that's what God wants? You think that's God's will? Here's why they said, because they think that's what the Bible prophesies. But I'm here today to tell you that no, we are supposed to be spreading the word. We're supposed to be teaching all nations. We are supposed to be teaching them to observe all things. Things should be getting better. And as we see things getting worse, we should see that as a reflection on us as Christians, that we need to work a little bit harder. We need to do a better job. We shouldn't get excited. We shouldn't throw our hands up. Again, what if it's another 300 or 400 years? We don't know. Alls I know, I'm glad that the previous generations did not have this mentality. The last generation did. Again, the 70s, 60s, 70s generation, that's when things really started going downhill. That's also when pre-tribulation and Zionist theology became a very big thing and became mainstream in Christianity. Since then, we have been on a downward trajectory. And I think we need to turn things around because we might be here for a very long time. And that this mentality of letting things go to pot, being excited when things are going to pot, is not a biblical mentality. And it is not the mentality previous generations of Christians had. And so in this documentary, there are some Christian nationalism scare tactics on there. And Christian nationalism is kind of a left-wing boogeyman right now. They're always trying to scare the left with, so they'll be against anything that sounds Christian. But let me just say that many people speaking positively and loudly about making America Christian again do have a doomsday agenda. Absolutely, they have a doomsday agenda. That is, and understand, if you have an eschatology that not only sees everything going to pot, sees the world getting worse and worse, but then you are supporting and advancing foreign policies that is going to make that happen, you do have a doomsday agenda. You have a doomsday mentality. And it's a shame on you for that. That's not right. As I've said before on this program, I am a premillennialist, but I am not a dispensational premillennialist. I'm an optimistic premillennialist, and I believe this pessimistic dispensational premillennialism it's comforted Christians when things go bad, rather than motivating them to action and turning the tide on things. And so this documentary, I think there's a lot of hypocrisy on it, because one of the things too that Christians are going to look at and get offended by, they talk about Christian organizations that are targeting troops to evangelize them, but obviously we're going to be for that kind of thing. And so I think it's hypocritical to be against private Christian groups, targeting troops to evangelize them, while at the same time being okay with government money being spent to indoctrinate them in just humanist mentalities, pro-LGBT, pro-trans ideologies. If you are for that, but against private Christian organizations raising money to try to reach troops, you're a hypocrite. So I felt like that was very hypocritical in having a problem with that kind of thing. But at the same time, if these Christian organizations are also promoting Zionism and a doomsday theology and a doomsday foreign policy, I can understand why these other people are worried about that. I get that. And I'm afraid many of these Christian organizations they refer to do have that type of mentality. And so the sad thing is that we know all these Christian groups reaching them, they probably are goofed up on the gospel, goofed up on a lot of doctrine. And yes, I would venture to say they're probably all very pro-Zionist, and they're indoctrinating our troops with that. I don't like that. I don't want to see that. I'm all for reaching them with the gospel, but not promoting Zionism, for sure. One of the things they did too in the documentary that I found disturbing, they showed scopes with John 8:12 on them, which John 8:12 is, then spake Jesus again to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. Why would we put a verse like that on the scope of a gun that people are going to be looking through before they shoot and kill somebody? That is ridiculous. We are trying to reach people in darkness. We are trying to save lives. We are trying to save souls. That's what we want to do. But yet people are using the Bible as justification to take lives and to destroy people. And what a shame that is. It is completely against the words of Jesus for Christians to promote wars, land grabs. This is killing our testimony in our world. And if we're going to reach the world, we aren't going to do it through supporting violence in the world. Whatever happened to blessed are the peacemakers? Whatever happened? It's like we know all these things and we apply all these Christian principles, But all those principles go out the window when it has anything to do with Israel. It's so frustrating. And it is the theology of many people. They cover this on there, that Jesus can't come back until Israel has the land fully possessed, making the return of Christ all about the Jews. And you say, oh, I don't believe that. You do to a certain extent. And I've heard Baptist preachers at national conferences preach about how Israel had to be in the land for the Messiah to come the first time. And they go to some prophecies that were given during the Babylonian captivity, and they came back in the land, and then Jesus came. And therefore, before Jesus can come the second time, Israel also has to be in the land, because Israel is God's timepiece. All things with prophecy begin and end with Israel. And they say all that on this documentary. Now, this pastor I heard, he basically ended the sermon that in 1948, Israel became a nation again, and they're back, basically saying the return of Christ is imminent. But even some of those same people, even that same individual, it's like they're not sure they have the land enough for Jesus to be able to come back. They're not going to take it as far as to say, well, the rapture is not imminent, because that will get them in trouble, because they don't have all the land yet. But they do. They kind of operate as if they just don't know for sure. So any gain that Israel can make in possessing the land, they do see that as making it more possible that Jesus Christ could return today, which is why so many Christians are supporting the removal of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and Israel fully possessing that land. And what a shame that is. What an absolute disgusting shame. And let me just say, God have mercy on American Christianity. We are failing our world in a big way. American Christianity, we are failing in reaching the Muslim people with the gospel. And I understand why. When they see us supporting things that are clearly evil, why would they listen to anything that we have to say? Why would they even think we love them or care about them when we support their enemies, when we support unjust and barbaric behavior against them? And I get it, their behavior is not always great either. Both sides need to be reached with the gospel. That should be our agenda. That should be how we reach the world. That's how we should make America a Christian nation, not through bloodshed, but no, through the preaching and teaching of God's word, with the spread of the gospel through peaceful means. That's what Christianity is supposed to stand for. That is what Jesus Christ promoted. We never see, even in the early church, when they were physically being persecuted, we do not see them fighting back and shedding blood in return. That is not the way we act as Christians, nor do we support other people doing the same thing. And yet, that's what's happening in American Christianity today. And we have, outsiders looking at us as American Christians and thinking something is very wrong with these people. And you know what? They're right. There's something wrong with American Christianity. There's nothing wrong with the Bible. There's nothing wrong with Jesus Christ. There's nothing wrong with the gospel. But we have made it look bad as a nation. When we have men like John Hagee in his sermons saying things like, are you listening, Russia? Are you listening, Iran? God's going to wipe you out. Why do they say things like that? Because they think God is actually going to come and wipe them out? Or is it because they are hoping that our nation will wipe them out and they will say that we were God's tool in doing that? And that's what they're promoting. They're not going to say America is going to wipe you out. But understand, when he says those statements like that, God's going to wipe them out. Okay? What he actually believes and what he's actually promoting is God wiping those nations out through us, allied with Israel. This is wicked theology I want nothing to do with. All Christians need to stop letting men like John Hagee and Robert Jeffress represent American Christianity. These men have the ear of our president and many of our politicians. They are influential and they are even respected by many, even in the Baptist world. And we should have no respect for these people. We need to call them out. Their theology is bad. And many independent fundamental Baptists have the same theology and it's wrong. It's out of the pit of hell. And let's stand against it and stop giving Christianity a black eye. And so this documentary, I would recommend you watch it just because of the fact that I think it's important for us to see how we are looking to our world. And again, this is not them being disgusted with us because of things the Bible actually does teach. Okay, that's fine. We will take that shame. We will take that ridicule. But I will not take the shame and ridicule that comes from promoting Zionism, because it is false and it is contrary to the scriptures. Even if you believe there is some special future for Israel, prophetically speaking, you should still be against Zionism. You should be against promoting any kind of foreign policy or politics that is just going to lead to doomsday. That is not what we've been called to do as Christians. We've been told to occupy till he's come. We've been told to take care of the vineyard. We've been told to spread the gospel and to teach all nations. And God wants us to succeed. And I believe prophecy shows that we will succeed. That doesn't mean everybody in the world is going to be saved. But it does mean that there are going to be people all over the world who are saved. There are going to be places in the world where things are going good and where God is blessing. And we need to try to make sure our nation is one of those nations. And we will do that by promoting true Christian principles, not fake Christian Zionist principles. So I appreciate everybody watching this. I hope this was informative and helpful to you. And so I will leave links in the description for this documentary, Praying for Armageddon. What a shame and that it is. Let's call this stuff out. Let's start making guys like John Hagee and Robert Jeffers have the same type of reputation as the Kenneth Copelands and the Benny Hinns and many of these other disgraced people. These men are a disgrace, and I am against them completely. So thank you for watching this. God bless you. We'll see y'all next time.